Lily stood in the doorway, her heart racing as the soft light of the setting sun painted the room with a warm glow. She had never felt so drawn to a place, as if the very walls held a secret that whispered her name. The quiet hum of a countryside was a stark contrast to the chaotic city she had left behind. But here, in her uncle's house, she had found a sense of belonging she hadn't known since her parents' tumultuous divorce. Her eyes scanned the room, taking in the meticulously organized bookshelves and the faint scent of her uncle's cologne. It was a space that reflected the man she had come to know over the past few months, calm, collected, and comforting. Michael, her uncle, had always been more of a mentor than a guardian. His gentle guidance and endless patience had helped shape her into the strong, independent woman she was today. The bond they shared was unshakable, or so she thought. The sound of footsteps grew closer, and Lily tensed. She knew she shouldn't be here, not in his room, not when he was sleeping. But she couldn't resist the urge to check on him, to ensure that he was okay. The creak of the floorboard under her foot was the only sound to pierce the silence as she approached his bedside. His eyes fluttered open, revealing a gaze that held a warmth she had always cherished. "Lily," he murmured sleepily, "what are you doing here?" Her thoughts raced, searching for a reasonable excuse, but she found none. Instead, she stumbled over her words. I didn't mean to wake you." He sat up, rubbing his eyes, and offered her a gentle smile, one that seemed to hold an understanding she hadn't noticed before. "It's okay," he assured her, patting the spot next to him. "You know you can always come talk to me." Lily felt a warmth spread through her as she took a tentative step forward and sat down. The air between them thickened, charged with an unspoken tension she hadn't felt in his presence until now. Her heart thudded in her chest as their eyes met, and she found herself leaning in, drawn to him in a way that defied logic. The room grew warmer, the space around them tightening as their breaths mingled. Suddenly, she realized what she was doing and pulled away, cheeks flaming, but Michael's hand on her cheek was a gentle invitation that she couldn't refuse. His eyes searched hers, a silent question hanging in the air. She felt a jolt of something she couldn't name, and her resolve crumbled. Before she knew it, their lips met in a kiss that was both soft and urgent. The door to the room opened, and the spell was broken. Lily jumped back, guilt flooding her as she saw Charlotte, her aunt, standing in the doorway, eyes wide with shock. The silence was deafening as they all processed the scene before them. This moment, so filled with passion and confusion, had shattered the delicate balance of their lives. The sound of the door closing echoed through the hallway, leaving Lily and Michael alone in the wake of their impulsive act. He sat up, his hand still resting on the bed where she had been moments ago. His voice was a mix of regret and hope as he spoke her name. "Lily, we need to talk." But she was already retreating, her mind a tumult of emotions. She had crossed the line she never thought she would, and now she wasn't sure how to find her way back. "I can't," she stammered, pulling away from him, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and longing. "I need to think, but I don't know how." Michael nodded slowly, his expression a mirror of the chaos she felt. He didn't attempt to stop her as she bolted from the room, the weight of their shared secret pressing down on her shoulders with every step she took. The house felt like it was closing in on her as she stumbled into her own room, her heart racing like it was trying to escape the cage of her chest. She slammed the door shut, the sound reverberating through the silent corridor. The darkness outside her window matched the turmoil within. She knew she had to get out, to breathe in the cool night air and clear her head. Without a second thought, she slipped into her shoes and tiptoed downstairs, careful not to make a sound that would betray her escape. The coolness of the night was a stark contrast to the heat that still lingered in her cheeks. She wandered through the garden, her mind racing with thoughts of what had just happened. The soft rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl were the only sounds to accompany her as she tried to piece together the shards of her shattered reality. The scent of jasmine filled her nose, a scent that had always brought her comfort, but tonight it only served as a painful reminder of the lines she had blurred. As she reached the edge of the property, she heard the crunch of gravel behind her and spun around. There he was, her Uncle Michael, standing under the moonlight, his eyes searching hers. The air between them was charged, a silent conversation passing in the unspoken words. "And you—" "We can't," he said, his voice thick with a sadness she hadn't heard before. "We can't do this." His fingers touched. The truth of his words hit her like a wave, cold and unyielding. But even as she nodded in agreement, her heart rebelled. The connection between them was undeniable, a magnetic force that seemed to defy the very fabric of their relationship. "But why?" she whispered, the words slipping from her lips despite her efforts to hold them back. "Why does it feel so right when we know it's wrong?" He stepped closer, his hand reaching for hers, but he stopped just short, the space between them a testament to their shared pain. "Because sometimes love doesn't care about the rules." The gravity of his words settled on her, heavy as lead. Love. Was that what this was? A love that had no place in their world? A love that could destroy the very foundation of the family she had come to depend on? "Sorry." They stood there for a moment, lost in their own thoughts, the night a silent witness to their turmoil. And then, with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the world, Michael pulled her into a tight embrace. "But we're going to try," he murmured into her hair. "For everyone's sake, we're going to try to make this right." Lily melted into him, her arms wrapping around his waist, clinging to him as if he was the only solid thing left in her life. They stood there, swaying slightly, their hearts beating together in a rhythm that felt both familiar and forbidden. In that moment, she knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, a journey that would test the very essence of who they were. But she also knew that she couldn't let go, not yet. The bond they had forged in that one stolen moment was stronger than the guilt that threatened to consume her. As they pulled away, she looked into his eyes, searching for answers she wasn't sure she wanted to find. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice trembling. He took a deep breath, the resolve in his eyes unmistakable. "We tell Charlotte." The words hung in the air like a storm cloud, dark and heavy. She knew it was the right thing to do, but the thought of facing her aunt, of confessing the truth, filled her with dread. They turned to walk back to the house, their steps slow and deliberate. The path was illuminated by the soft glow of the moon, casting long shadows that stretched out before them like fingers of accusation. The house loomed in the distance, a silent sentinel to the tumult of their emotions. As they approached the back door, the porch light flickered on, casting a warm glow that seemed to mock the chill that had settled over them. Lily's heart was a cacophony in her chest, a symphony of fear and desire. Michael's hand on the doorknob was a promise of the conversation they were about to have, one that would irrevocably change the course of their lives. Inside, the kitchen was a stark contrast to the tranquil night outside. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a cold, sterile light on the gleaming counters and polished floors. They sat at the table, their hands clasped together, the only source of warmth in the chilly room. The clock ticked away the moments, each second feeling like an eternity as they gathered their thoughts. Finally, Michael spoke, his voice steady and firm. "We need to tell her everything." Lily nodded, her throat tight with unshed tears. "But how?" she whispered. "How do we explain this?" "I'm terrified, Lily," she said, shaking her head, sorry for herself. He took a deep breath, his eyes never leaving hers. "We start with the truth, Lily. That's all we can do." They found Charlotte in the living room, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. She looked up as they entered, the sadness in her gaze cutting deeper than any knife could. The air was thick with the weight of their secret, the tension palpable. "I know," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I felt it too." The room spun around Lily as Michael spoke, the words tumbling from his mouth in a rush. He told her everything, the feelings, the kiss, the overwhelming need that had drawn them together despite their better judgment. Each word felt like a confession, a betrayal, but also a step towards the truth that had been festering beneath the surface. For a long moment, Charlotte said nothing. The only sound was the crackling of the fireplace and the tick of the clock. Then she stood, her movements slow and deliberate, and walked over to them. She took Lily's hand, her touch gentle and warm. "I love you both," she said, her voice trembling, "and I don't know what this means for us, but I do know that we can't keep living a lie." The weight of her words settled over them like a shroud, heavy and suffocating. The love she spoke of was a tangible presence in the room, a love that had grown and shifted over the years, taking on a form none of them had anticipated. Together, they decided to confront the truth, to navigate the treacherous waters of their newfound feelings with open hearts and honest intentions. The night stretched on, their conversation a tapestry of pain, hope, and the unspoken understanding that nothing would ever be the same. In the morning, the house was quiet, the silence a stark contrast to the tumult of the night before. Lily woke up in her own bed, the events of the previous evening feeling almost like a feverish dream. But when she saw Michael in the hallway, his eyes met hers, and she knew it was real. The air between them crackled with the unspoken words, the unexplored emotions that had been unearthed. And it was often the light of a conversation that overwhelmed her, their hearts thudding melodramatically together. They had a choice to make: to either bury these feelings and pretend they didn't exist, or to face them head on, regardless of the consequences. It was a choice that would define not just their relationship, but the very fabric of their family. With each step they took towards the future, the house seemed to sigh with the burden of their shared secret. They knew that the path ahead would be fraught with difficulty, that the love they had discovered was as much a curse as it was a blessing. But as they sat at the breakfast table, their hands brushing together, they found a strange comfort in the knowledge that they were in this together. The days that followed were a blur of stolen glances and whispered conversations. They tread carefully, trying to maintain the facade of normalcy while the earth shifted beneath their feet. But the more they talked, the more Lily realized that their bond was not something that could be easily dismissed. One evening, as they sat together in the fading light, Michael took her hand in his. "We can't keep doing this," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We have to figure out what this means." Lily nodded, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I know." They decided to take a trip to get away from the suffocating confines of the house and the prying eyes of their small town. They needed space to breathe, to explore the depths of their feelings without fear of judgment. They packed a small bag each and set out in Michael's old truck, the engine rumbling beneath them like a heartbeat. The drive was long and silent, the only sound the hum of the tires on the asphalt. They found themselves in a small cabin by a lake, the water a mirror to the tumult in their souls. The quiet was deafening, a stark contrast to the cacophony of their thoughts. But amidst the chaos, there was a sense of peace that came from being together. As the days passed, they talked and laughed and cried, sharing their fears and their hopes. They held each other through sleepless nights, their hearts entwined in a dance that neither of them knew the steps to. They swam in the lake, the cool water a balm to their fevered skin, and watched the stars come out, their light a silent witness to their love. But the ideal couldn't last. Reality had a way of crashing in, even in the most secluded of places. One morning, as they sat on the porch with their coffee, the silence between them grew heavier, the air thick with unspoken truths. "We have to go back," Michael said, his eyes on the horizon. "We can't run from this forever." Lily knew he was right. The time had come to face the music, to confront the life they had left behind. They had to decide if their love was worth the potential destruction of their family, if it was something they could live with, or if they would bury it deep and move on. The journey back was fraught with tension, the unspoken words hanging in the air like a storm cloud. When they finally pulled into the driveway, the house looked the same, yet it felt like a foreign land. The door creaked open, and they stepped inside, their hearts heavy with the weight of their secret. They knew that the moment they faced Charlotte, everything would change. The love they had found was a beacon in the dark, but it was also a bomb that could blow their world apart. The question remained, would they have the courage to follow their hearts, even if it meant letting go of everything they had ever known?